My wife cheated on me with our lawyer during our divorce, and now she's trying to steal $300, $0 of our savings, and I just found out she's been secretly transferring our property to her sister for months. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my wife. We had been married for 8 years, building a life that looked pretty solid from the outside. We had a nice house, good jobs, 2 kids. But all that came crashing down in a way I never saw coming, like a bad movie I couldn't wake up from. The most shocking part, it started with what seemed like small signs but turned out to be a full-blown betrayal that changed everything. It all began a few months ago, when I started noticing acting a little different. She'd come home more tired than usual, often claiming work had been stressful, or she was busy with some project at her law firm. She'd stay late, sometimes disappear for days, and whenever I asked about her whereabouts, she'd brush me off with a sharp, dismissive tone. She'd say I was overthinking, that I was paranoid, that she was just working hard, but I could see it in her eyes. There was something she wasn't telling me. Then came the little things. Her phone started buzzing constantly, always on silent, even when she was in the shower or out with the kids. Sometimes she'd slip her phone into her purse and hide it when I was near. I caught her texting late at night more than once, and she'd quickly hide her screen, pretending she was just scrolling through social media. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself maybe she was just stressed or overworked, but deep down I knew something was wrong. One night I decided to check her phone. I knew it was sneaky, but I couldn't shake this feeling that she was hiding something. I waited until she was asleep, then grabbed her phone when she was in the bathroom. What I found made my stomach drop. There were messages, flirty, intimate messages between her and our lawyer, a guy named Mark. The kind of messages that made it clear they'd been more than just professional acquaintances. I saw references to secret meetings, plans to meet up, and even some explicit talk about sex. My heart pounded as I scrolled through her phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't wake her up to confront her that night. Instead, I sat there in the dark, staring at those messages, trying to process what I'd just seen. It felt like my entire world was collapsing. How could my wife, who always seemed so dedicated and loving, be cheating on me with the very lawyer we'd hired to help us through our divorce? The irony hit hard. We were in the middle of a divorce, and she was already planning her next move, probably with him. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I needed to confront her. I waited until she was getting ready for work, then called her into the living room. When she saw my face, the way I was trembling with anger and hurt, her smile faltered. I laid the phone on the table and showed her the messages. Her face twisted into a look of pure disdain, like I was bothering her with my petty accusations. "Oh, come on, Jason," she snapped, rolling her eyes. "That's just some stupid misunderstanding. Mark and I are just friends. You're reading too much into it. You're always accusing me of cheating, but you don't have any proof." She laughed nervously, trying to brush it off, but I saw the lie in her eyes. She was lying through her teeth. I could see the guilt, the panic, the way her hands trembled just a little. She was trying to act like it was nothing, but I knew better. That confrontation was just the beginning. The shock was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could she lie so easily? How could she pretend everything was fine while secretly sneaking around? I realized then that my wife had been hiding a lot more than just an affair. She'd been manipulating me, trying to keep her secrets safe, all while planning her next move in this game of deception. The worst part, as I sat there staring at her with tears in my eyes, she kept insisting she loved me, that it was a mistake, that she'd never do anything to hurt me. But her words felt hollow, like empty promises from someone who had already crossed every line. The betrayal was too deep, and I knew I needed to do something, but I wasn't sure what. All I knew was that my trust had been shattered, and I was left standing there, feeling like I'd lost everything I cared about. After that day, everything changed. The house felt colder, quieter, like the walls were closing in on me. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around the same thoughts, her lies, the messages, the way she looked at me with that fake concern when I confronted her. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her bank accounts. I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. What I uncovered next was even worse. Over the past few months had been transferring chunks of our savings, around $300, $0, to accounts she set up in her sister's name. I found evidence of multiple transfers, some small, some large, all with vague descriptions like investment or family loan. The money was disappearing fast, and I had no idea what she was using it for. I felt sick reading those bank statements. It was like she was stealing from us right under my nose, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. But that wasn't all. I also discovered a series of secret property transfers. She'd been secretly transferring our house and some other assets to her sister, Lisa, over the past few months. The paperwork was filled out in her name, but it was clear she'd been orchestrating this behind my back. I couldn't believe it. She was systematically taking everything we had built, our home, our savings, and handing it over to her sister. I had no idea she was capable of this level of betrayal. I felt rage boil up inside me. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly, cheat on me, steal from us, and then try to take everything? The betrayal was not just emotional, it was financial, legal, everything. And I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to act fast before she took every last dollar in property, leaving me with nothing. I started planning my next move. I reached out to a lawyer I found through a friend, someone who specialized in financial crimes and divorce law. I told him everything I'd uncovered, and he confirmed my worst fears. Was manipulating the situation, trying to drain our accounts and shift assets to her sister's name so she could walk away with a clean slate. The lawyer warned me that if I didn't act quickly, I'd lose everything. Meanwhile's behavior grew more aggressive. She was becoming more bitchy, more dismissive, like she was trying to push me away. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her, and even started lying about where she was going. She insisted she was just working late or meeting with clients, but I knew better. Her phone was always hidden, and her stories never added up. I caught her in a few little lies, and it only fueled my suspicion that she was hiding even more. One night, I decided to follow her. I needed to see where she was sneaking off to. I parked my car near her sister Lisa's house and watched her slip out after midnight. She was gone for hours, meeting someone, probably Mark, the lawyer, no doubt. When she finally came back, she was visibly nervous. She kept checking her phone, and her face was pale. That was the moment I realized I was right. She wasn't just cheating, she was actively trying to cover her tracks. That realization hit me hard. I'd been naive for so long, trusting her to be honest with me, but her actions proved otherwise. She didn't just cheat physically, she was scheming, trying to steal our future, our home, everything we had. I felt a mixture of heartbreak, anger, and a sense of helplessness. How do you fight someone who's been planning this behind your back for months? How do you stop her from tearing apart the life I worked so hard to build? I knew I had to act fast, but I also felt overwhelmed. The emotional toll was heavy. Every day I felt like I was losing pieces of myself. My trust was shattered, and I was starting to question everything. Was she ever really the woman I married? Or was she just pretending all along? The betrayal cut so deep that I wondered if I'd ever feel whole again. But I also knew I couldn't let her win. I had to find a way to protect what was left and get justice for what she'd done. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that was playing a high-stakes game, and I was the only one left standing in the dark. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to salvage anything, my money, my house, my dignity. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, especially not after everything she'd done. So I sat down with my lawyer the next day, laid everything out. The secret transfers, the messages, her secret meetings, the money she was siphoning off. It was clear she was trying to cheat me out of our shared assets, and I had to stop her. My lawyer told me I could file for an emergency injunction to freeze her accounts and halt any further transfers. I was relieved to hear that, but I also knew it wouldn't be easy. Was cunning and manipulative, and she'd probably try to spin her way out of it. But I had the evidence now, and I was determined to fight for what was ours. While we waited for the legal process, I started gathering more proof, screenshots, bank statements, copies of property transfer documents. I wanted to make sure I had everything I needed to prove her guilt beyond any doubt. Meanwhile, kept up her act. She was still pretending to be the loving wife, but her attitude was colder, more dismissive. She'd throw little jabs, accuse me of being paranoid, accuse me of stalking her. She'd say I was losing my mind, that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I knew she was trying to gaslight me, to make me doubt myself, to make me feel guilty for catching her. It was her way of controlling the narrative, but I refused to be played. One afternoon, I decided to confront her directly. I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down. I sat her down in the living room, looked her straight in the eyes, and told her I knew everything. I laid out the evidence, the transfers, the secret property deals, the messages. Her face twisted with anger and contempt. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and said I was just jealous, that I was imagining things. She told me I was paranoid, that I had trust issues, that she loved me and was only trying to protect the family. But I could see through her lies now. Her words were empty, her excuses hollow. That confrontation was a turning point. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I finally had proof. Heartbreak because I knew I had been blind for so long. I had loved her, trusted her, and she'd been betraying me from the start. I felt furious that she'd been manipulating me, stealing from us, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I decided I had to take control of the situation, protect what was left, and make her face the consequences. The next few days were intense. I worked closely with my lawyer to file the legal documents needed to freeze her accounts and stop the property transfers. I also contacted a forensic accountant to help trace the stolen money. I knew she'd try to hide more assets or move them around, but I was determined to catch everything. Meanwhile, behavior grew more erratic. She was snapping at me, insulting me, trying to gaslight me into doubting my own judgment. She even accused me of spying on her, saying I was crazy for looking into her affairs. But I didn't care. I knew the truth now, and I was going to fight for it. I also started secretly recording our conversations. I wanted evidence of her lies, her manipulations, her threats. I knew she'd try to spin this as me being paranoid or controlling, but I had to have proof. Every time she accused me of being overbearing, I'd record her sneering or lying, just to have it on file. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I knew she was planning her next move to get around the legal restrictions. But I was ready for her. I'd learned that trust was gone, replaced by suspicion, and a fierce determination to protect myself and what was mine. Looking back now, I realize how much anger and heartbreak I've gone through. It's like watching someone you love turn into a stranger overnight. But at the same time, I feel a strange sense of clarity. I see her for who she really is, selfish, manipulative, willing to destroy everything for her own gain. That realization has given me strength. I'm not going to let her keep this up, not without a fight. I've got the evidence, the law on my side, and I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get justice. And even if I don't get everything back, I know I won't let her steal my peace, my dignity, or my future. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I had all my evidence in order. The day I filed for the emergency injunction, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, finally some control. My lawyer was sharp, aggressive, and clear about the steps we needed to take to freeze her accounts, halt any further property transfers, and start the process of dividing what was left. Of course, everything. She threw a fit, calling me paranoid and accusing me of trying to sabotage her. Her voice was shrill, full of contempt, as she insisted she was innocent, that I was just trying to ruin her reputation. But I knew better. I had the proof. Her lies, her manipulations, they were staring me in the face. Still, her reaction made me realize how deeply she was invested in keeping her secrets hidden. She was desperate to maintain her facade, even if it meant throwing everything else under the bus. I had no illusions anymore. She was dangerous, and she was willing to do whatever it took to get her way. While the legal stuff was ongoing, I started to piece together what her real plan was. I found more emails and texts, conversations with Lisa, her sister, discussing how to transfer the property without me catching on. They'd been working on this for months, slowly shifting assets, hiding money, creating layers of deception. I learned that had been funneling money into her sister's accounts, promising her a cut once everything was settled. It was a carefully coordinated scheme, and I was just now catching up. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, yes, but also scared. How much had she already taken? How much more was she planning to steal? I kept replaying that moment when I first saw her messages, feeling that sickening ache in my chest. I trusted her with everything, our home, our future, and she'd been secretly tearing it apart. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. That realization hit hard. I'd loved her, but she'd turned into a stranger, a liar, a thief. I also started to notice her trying to manipulate the kids. She'd make excuses, tell them I was being unfair or paranoid. I caught her whispering to our daughter about Dad not understanding, trying to turn them against me. It made me furious. She was trying to damage my relationship with the kids, all for her own gain. I realized I had to be careful. I couldn't let her manipulate them against me, not after everything. The turning point came when I decided I had to confront her one more time, face to face, and lay everything out. I wanted her to see that I knew what she was doing, that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. We met in the living room, her sitting there, trying to look innocent, and me standing tall, holding the folder with all the proof. I told her I knew about the transfers, the property deals, the lies. Her face went pale and she started to sweat. "Look, Jason," she said, trying to play the victim, "you're overreacting. This is all just a misunderstanding. I love you, I swear. I'm trying to protect us. You're just paranoid because I've been working so hard for us." Her voice cracked, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her she was a liar, that I'd expose everything, and that I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Her eyes flashed with anger and she snapped back, calling me a controlling jerk who didn't understand her. But I knew the truth now. I saw her for what she truly was. That day was a wake-up call. I realized I couldn't trust her and I had to prepare for a fight, not just legal but emotional. I was angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been a fool for so long, believing in her, trusting her love. Now I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted. I decided I would protect myself and my kids, no matter how hard it was. The next step was to get the court to finalize the injunction, to freeze her assets and prevent her from transferring anything else. I knew she'd try to work around it, so I had to stay one step ahead. I also started looking into ways to recover the stolen money, hiring forensic accountants to trace every dollar. It was a long shot, but I was determined. I had to fight for what was rightfully ours, even if it meant tearing down everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The pain was deep, but I also felt something else, resolve. I wasn't going to let her destroy me, not without a fight. The court date for the injunction came sooner than I expected, and when it did, I felt both relief and a gnawing sense of dread. Seeing the judge sign off on the order to freeze her accounts and halt any further property transfers was a small victory, but I knew this was just the beginning. His reaction was classic. She threw a tantrum, yelling and crying, trying to sway the judge with her sob story about how I was ruining her reputation and trying to isolate her from the kids. But I had the evidence, and it was clear she'd been lying the whole time. Once the injunction was in place, she was furious. She went into full damage control mode, trying to spin her side to friends and family, claiming I was paranoid and controlling. I heard through the grapevine she was trying to convince everyone that I was the villain, that I'd been abusive or manipulative. It made me sick. I knew her game now. She was good at twisting facts, at playing the victim, at making herself look innocent while she schemed behind the scenes. Meanwhile, I worked tirelessly with my forensic accountant to trace the stolen money. It was like chasing ghosts. Money had been transferred to accounts in her sister Lisa's name, then moved around through multiple shell companies and offshore accounts. Every step revealed another layer of deception. I was stunned by how meticulous she'd been, covering her tracks so well that it took days just to follow the money trail. But I refused to give up. I knew that if I could just find the source, I could stop her from stealing any more. At the same time, I had to prepare for the emotional fallout. Manipulations had already started to affect the kids. She was telling them I didn't love them, that I was trying to take everything away from their family. I caught her whispering to our daughter, trying to turn her against me, and it made my stomach turn. I knew I had to be careful to protect my relationship with the kids, to show them that I was still there for them, even if their mother was trying to poison their minds. One night, I decided to confront her again, but this time with a different purpose. I wanted her to understand that I knew her game and that I was not going to be manipulated anymore. I sat her down, pulled out the evidence I'd gathered, and told her I was going to fight her in court for everything she'd stolen. Her face twisted in fury, her eyes blazing with hatred. She yelled that I was ruining everything, that I was jealous and paranoid, that she still loved me and was only trying to do what was best for us all. But I saw through her lies now, and I knew I had to be strong. The emotional toll was heavy. I'd gone from feeling betrayed and humiliated to feeling a mix of anger and determination. I realized that I'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer, and that I'd been blind to it. I'd loved her so much that I'd ignored the signs, convinced myself she was just stressed or busy. But now I understood that her actions had been calculated, ruthless even. I felt a strange mix of sadness and resolve. Sad because I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, and resolved because I refused to let her destroy everything we'd built. In the days that followed, I focused on rebuilding myself and protecting what was left. I stayed close with my lawyer, continued to monitor her accounts, and made sure I had all the evidence ready for the next court hearing. I also started working with a therapist, trying to sort through the emotional wreckage and figure out how to move forward. I knew I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could choose how I responded. I decided I'd fight for my rights, for my peace, and for my children's future. This wasn't over, but I was no longer going to be her pawn in her game of deception. I was done being naive. Now I was ready to stand my ground. The court hearings dragged on for what felt like forever, but when the final judgment finally came through, it was everything I'd hoped for and more. The judge awarded me control of the remaining assets, ordered to return the stolen money, and declared her transfers null and void. Her face was a mask of fury and defeat as she realized she'd lost the game she'd been playing for months. I watched her try to spin her story one last time, but the evidence was undeniable. She'd lied, manipulated, stolen, and tried to cheat her way into a better life at my expense. The court made it clear that her actions had consequences. In the aftermath, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. The legal battle was over, but the emotional scars remained. I'd lost the trust I once had in my marriage, and I knew I'd carry the betrayal with me forever. Still, I was grateful that I stood up for myself, that I'd fought to protect what was left of my life. The money she stole, those hundreds of thousands, was returned, and I could finally breathe a little easier knowing she couldn't take it all away. My relationship with the kids has been complicated. They saw their mother's true nature during the chaos, and I had to work hard to rebuild their trust. I made a vow to be there for them, to show them that even in the darkest moments, there's a way to stand tall and move forward. I've started therapy to process everything: anger, sadness, betrayal, and to learn how to heal. It's not easy, but I know I'm stronger now. The experience has changed me. I'm more cautious, more guarded, but also more aware of the importance of honesty and integrity. Looking back, I realize I've learned some hard lessons. Never ignore the small signs of trouble, because they often lead to the biggest betrayals. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. And most importantly, don't be afraid to fight for what's right, even if it means facing the person you once loved and trusted most. Sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is to confront the truth head-on and take back control, no matter how painful it is. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, here's my advice: document everything. Get legal help early. Don't let your partner manipulate or gaslight you into doubting your instincts. Trust your gut and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. It's hard, so damn hard, but in the end, the truth always comes to light. And when it does, you'll realize that you're stronger than you ever thought. I may have lost my marriage, but I gained clarity, resilience, and a future I can finally start to rebuild.